Hello everybody, today I want to take a moment to show you the GroundTruth tool created for Bible food systems. You'll see this right here is the main screen. There's a little bit more up here because I'm signed in here with an administrator account right now. And this shows my email. I'm not trying to hide my email for anyone, so if you guys want to see, email me, feel free to email me. But this is just an alpha version, kind of a test, but it's working really well. And I think as I show you how this works, you're going to see the importance of it. So if we start an assessment from the beginning, and first let me point out a couple of things. I do have a clear methodology up here. I want everyone to understand how this tool works, and I want to be completely transparent in what data is used, what our limitations are, and how we can make this better as we go forward. I do know the weak spots of this, and this also allows people to check my work. I also have a platform vision up here that describes a little bit about where I'd like this to go. This doesn't have everything, but for this part of this tool, the goals of the things that we would like to do. So back to the actual tool itself. We can come up here and let's actually start an assessment today. So the first question asks, what is your role? And this is just want to know, are you a resident, a customer, a leader, a community leader? Maybe you're working for a university trying to look at the impact in a certain region. Or maybe you own a grocery store, manage a grocery store. You're trying to figure out the answer to how things are there. Today, we're going to say we're a community leader. And we're just going to hit the next step button. The next question is going to ask us what it is we're assessing. Are we assessing a specific grocery store, a home, neighborhood, or community location, or you're just not even really sure, right? Today, we're going to say we're going to assess a neighborhood or a location. I'm just going to hit next step. So here is where it asks you for the details. Where are you going to assess? You can check this button here and make it where it assesses just a zip code. What that does, though, is it takes you to the center of that zip code. It's not going to be as accurate, and we do call that out here, that if you use just a zip code, it's not going to be as accurate as if you use an actual address. And what we're going to do today is we are going to use address for the former Rice Community Market store in Carroll, Illinois. This is that address. And we're just going to hit next step. And then it's going to give us a questionnaire. Now, you could scroll down to the bottom here just to assess, and it wouldn't change anything. It defaults to a answer that has no weight. But today we're actually going to go through this because these questions are tailored to the questions you already answered. And since we're looking at this as a community leader, looking at a specific area, these questions are going to be tailored to that. The first one is there a full service grocery store that currently serves the community? And no, there's not. There was, but there's not now. How far must most residents travel to reach a full service grocery store? And the correct answer is 5 to 10 miles. The closest store to is over 7 miles away. Are dollar stores or convenience stores functioning as primary food access points in this community? And yes, there's a dollar store here in your neighborhood. How significant are transportation barriers to grocery access for residents without vehicles? I'd say it's pretty high. There is a bus system here, but it makes it difficult. If the nearest grocery option closed or became inaccessible, what would be the impact on this community? It would be a severe and immediate hardship, not just for the residents here, but for surrounding areas as well. Are there known food security concerns affecting residents in this area? And there are significant food security concerns present. Has grocery access in this community become more limited over the past several years? And yes, it has. Is the nearest grocery option viewed as stable by local leadership and stakeholders? And we're going to actually leave this one as not sure. We don't know that store. We don't know what local leadership and stakeholders feel about that store. Is grocery access a recognized current emerging priority for local leadership? And it absolutely is a local leadership priority. If we had to attract or develop a grocery store here, how likely is it to happen? Let's be honest, it's pretty unlikely at this point. And then once we've selected our options up here, we can go back and change what we want to. We just select assess. Now this is going to run pretty quickly right now. It might take a little bit longer if it's assessing an area for the first time. But this area has been assessed before. This address has been assessed before. And it's going to bring us up our results. We're going to get a score and a risk factor from that score. So the score here is 76, acute risk. There's going to be a little paragraph there that kind of tells you a little bit about what the result was and why it shows what it shows for that score. When you scroll down just a little bit, you can see that the USDA has the census tract flagged formally as a low access census tract. It's considered a rural community. There's one full service grocery option within 10 miles, 6.93 miles as the crow flies. We'll get that in a second. There are $9/convenience stores within 10 miles. So our sources here, Google Places, SNAP, BBT, some of that stuff here. And you can find all that information again up here in the About Methodology section. But come down here and it's going to show you the one full service grocery store found. Now, here's the thing. I found $9 convenience stores and one store that came up that and identified as not being a grocery store. So when you were to go to Google right now, if you opened up Google Maps and searched this area for grocery stores, this is probably what you would find. You would find a total of 11 stores in the range that we're looking at here. But these Dollar General stores, this convenience store, these gas stations, they are not grocery stores. The ranch mart down here has been identified as not being a grocery store. The only thing that our technology does at this point here is identify that there is a full service grocery store here. But what if we made a mistake? Well, you, as you're evaluating that, could go in here and check this box right here, hit the reevaluate button, and it would say, okay, they know this isn't a grocery store. The reality is, we could also, if we don't know, say we're evaluating an area we're not familiar with, we can click this more detailed button. And it's going to pull that up on Google Maps for us so that we can explore that idea more. So this Stop and Shop here, we've recently viewed it. We can see it on the map. More importantly, we can look at the photos from that store. What photos have people shared from that store? Maybe we can determine whether or not this is a grocery store. We've never been here before, right? I have, but you may not have been. So we go over here and we start looking. Well, they sell pizza. Maybe it's not a grocery store. Then we click it again. It shows a picture of the outside and there's a street view, and that looks like a small grocery store. Maybe we go back and we look at the reviews. And if we look at these reviews, we could see that they are a grocery store. They're not just that they've got meats available. They're not just a convenience store. So we can pretty safely say that the assessment of this store is correct. It is a full-service grocery store. Then we can come down here and we'll see these are dollar stores, convenience stores. The reason that you don't see the option to change these is because we're pretty confident that we got these right. There may be some with lower confidence level that might have that option. And then there'll be stores that are excluded from the access calculations. And if you were curious, and again, this one, we've got enough confidence level that it's not a grocery store, that we don't have to provide this option here to verify. But if there was one that had less of a confidence level, we would be different. You click on the more details and we can see it's range mart. I mean, it says mart. Maybe it's a grocery store. If you do a Google search, it's going to pop up when you search for grocery stores in the region. And the very first thing you see is a photo for it that shows a bunch of tools. That certainly is not groceries. Shoes, leather, tools, knives, hats, saddles. nice store to have in the area, not grocery access. So this correctly took us from 11 stores that we would find if we did a search on Google Maps to one store that we know is actually a grocery store. 10 stores that aren't doing anything to provide access to the community. Now it maps it out as well. And just like above, when you look at the map, here's a Stop and Shop. Here's the area that we assessed. So we can see the distance. And one of the things I'll point out up here, 6.93 miles is the distance the crow flies. So if you were going to drive there from the address you punched, that's 7.6 miles. So that does make a difference, especially in certain locations with bridges and rivers. In this particular case, you're not going across the river to get to the grocery store. But if this were the grocery store instead, then we would have a different choice. There's the ranch mark, and just like above, you can click on the marker on the map and say, why is that what it is? And you can do that with any of them. Even the Dollar General will pop up with the Google Maps location data. Now, this location doesn't have specialty or limited. If we were to do this in a certain area, you might find farmers markets, butcher shops, or other stores that aren't really a full grocery store, but do help with the food access area. And those are weighed. They are explaining the methodology of this. You'll also see the demographics here. It shows you the population, that census tract, poverty rate, and anything over 20% is going to be considered elevated. The median household income, how many households have no vehicle. This is just your census data. And then it gives us an answer as to how is it functioning. Up here, we know that the USDA has formally flagged it. But down here, we're going to see how it's actually functioning. And we can see that it is functioning as a food desert. Now, the reason this is important, and it'll show you here what the score drivers are, you can look at that, you'll have good information. Before we go on to explain a little more why this is so important, if we click on Download PDF report here, it will actually download a PDF for us that it gives you the full report. And you can see the full assessment here, the date that it was done, the risk factor for that area, and how it was determined, what stores are full up in that region. This would be excellent if you were going to present this information outside of just on the screen. So we'll make sure it's easy to access and easy to use as well. This might be something you might attach to the grant report or take to a city council meeting, or even take to the bank with you if you were trying to get a loan to open up a store. Right. It's really important that we can see functional access in the neighborhood. And the reason this is so important, if we just go over here and we start a new assessment, and let's say that we are still a community leader and we're going to assess a neighborhood. But this time, we're just going to use the zip code. And the zip code that we're going to use this time is for an area that I already know about. All right. But you may not know about this. So 62995, that's the zip code we're checking. It's for Vienna, Illinois. Now, if we don't answer any of these questions, then this survey has no weight. So today, for this one, we're going to assess it without those questions answered. And it's going to give us an assessment. So we can see that this address or this zip code gives us a score of 7 and stable right now. And that it's also not currently flagged by the USDA. You can see it's listed as an urban area instead of a rural area. Now, the difference in that is how far out this looks, right? It's finding that there's $3 stores or convenience stores, but it's finding that there's a Dollar General Market and the Stuckey's. Now, I'm not 100% certain, but I feel like the Stuckey's may not be a grocery store. I've seen them as truck stops before, so let's find out. And we'll use our information here. And we can see that Stuckey's is not a grocery store. It was found out wrong by the data. Now, this is something that we're working on improving. That's why we've got this in here. We're going to say it's not a grocery store. Dollar General Market, it depends on who you are, on how you feel about a Dollar General Marketplace. They do bring food access. But for this particular case, we're going to say it's not a grocery store. Even though a Dollar General Market does bring in some better food access than just your standard Dollar General, it still doesn't really act the same way a grocery store does. It does provide some access to groceries and a little bit improved access to meats and produce. Not the kind of access you would get if you had an actual grocery store there. Now, we're going to update the results by removing those. And you can see that instantly, when we remove those two stores because they're not right, we have now an acute risk. But the USDA says this place has adequate access. It's because the USDA has not looked at this in many years. The data from the USDA is not accurate, not because it wasn't accurate to begin with, but because we only run a census once every 10 years. Now it shows that there's 0 grocery options. It's just a dollar store / convenience store, and that's the primary food source. Now we can come down here, we can see that there's a Casey's, a BP, an AC's. We can see that these stores are not food retailers. When we scroll down a little bit more, we can see the poverty rate, median household income, just like before. And now we can see this is functionally operating as a food desert. So now, if somebody were to look at the USDA map and try to figure out where they can place a grocery store that would help, they're not going to flag Vienna, Illinois, because according to the USDA, this area's got adequate access. We know better because we've actually done an actual assessment of the location. If you consider this Dollar General Market to be adequate access, then you'll have a different assessment result, slightly different. But if you don't, and many people in the food industry would not, then you're going to see this is absolutely operating as a food desert. There's no grocery stores anywhere nearby. And if we wanted to really take a look at this and see how true that may be, then what we can do is use another tool that we've got that helps make us a little more visual. And what that is a food access map. Now, there are currently 2 maps, a V1 and a V2, which is version 1, version 2. This is something I've been working on, trying to make sure that they're accurate. And I think that they're as accurate as we can with the resources we've got right now. So, again, I fully believe in being as transparent as possible here. You'll see that there's an about limitations. It shows what our known limitations are. I can't tell you what our unknown limitations are because we don't know them. But this data is all this public access information right now. When we look at this right here, we're using information from Google Maps. We're using information from some other sources that cost money. And so if we're just checking one area out, those API calls, that information that we request to run this assessment isn't highly expensive. But if you start doing it hundreds or thousands of times to cover the entire state, and if you follow the rules of that access to that data, it only allows you to store it for 30 days, then it could get really expensive to cover the entire state. Ideally, at some point in time in the future, it would be nice to cover the entire state with that level of data. But for now, we're using just the publicly available data. So that's going to be census information. That's also going to be USDA information on SNAP stores and WIC stores. So for now, we've just done the state of Illinois. And part of the reason for that is because the state of Illinois has publicly made available the stores that take WIC within it. So it's an easy state to accomplish. The WIC retailer list is updated on a regular basis. The federal government provides a list of the SNAP retailers nationwide. And the SNAP retailers state what they are when they put in their application. So on the database from the federal government, it tells you if they are listed as a convenience store or a small grocery store, medium grocery store, large grocery store. So this uses that information along with some other rules to try to weed out some of the dollar stores. Most of your dollar stores do not offer fresh meats, fresh veggies, fresh fruits. So we don't want to count them in this. But this started as just a simple leaflet map. And that's what this one is. And this is still usable. It still has its uses. It just maps out where the grocery stores are and puts a ring around them. So you can easily change this if we just want to see stores that only accept both SNAP and WIC statewide. Just uncheck everything else. We just want to look at stores that are SNAP and WIC combo stores. So we're unchecking everything else. And this is now just going to pull public data of what stores accept SNAP and WIC. Down here it says there's 2 stores. Now, if we look at that a little closer, we'll see that one of those stores is Rise Community Market. Now, I know, and if you didn't know already, unfortunately, Rise Community Market closed a while back. They're not accepting SNAP or WIC. So this data is still partially outdated. That is one of the limitations that we've got listed on here. With Google Maps, we would easily be able to recognize that store's closed, or if a new store opened, pretty quickly recognize the store's open within days at the latest when it comes to store closures. And that store would be removed as a closed store. Unfortunately, the SNAP and the WIC information doesn't always follow so closely. So there could still be delays in some of this data. But not nearly as delayed as the data that we get from the Census Bureau. So now we can look at this map and we can see, especially when we look into certain areas. So if we want to go to a certain area, let's look at Peoria. And let's go pull up Peoria. There it is. And you can see there's a lot of areas here that just don't have coverage for SNAP and WIC. And what you'll see here is there's what looks like broken rings. Well, the way this is designed, if a grocery store is in a rural area, it's going to get a 10-mile ring. If it's in a suburban area, it's going to get a 5-mile ring. And if it's within a urban area, it should get a 2-mile ring. I believe it is. It might be 1 mile. I'm pretty sure it's 2 miles. But the problem is that you don't want a store that's in a rural area covering a store that's in an urban area. That would just defeat the purpose. So that's why these rings are broken here. This area has a rural area store. This is an urban area. So if we want to have an accurate assessment of what this area looks like, we can't include a rural area store as access for this urban area. We can scroll in and we can click on any one of these stores and see what they are. So here's Starford Food Mart, and it accepts SNAP and EBT. And we should be able to look at any store in the state, in any region, and see the SNAP and EBT taken. But I didn't really like the way that this looked. I think it has its uses. And over here, I put in some overlays where we can look at things like the poverty rate, the access to vehicles. This is important when we're talking about food access. Obesity rates, which are known to increase in areas where there's less food access. Same thing with diabetes and coronary heart disease. So instead of just saying, hey, people that have less access to food are more likely to have diabetes, we can actually visually show it. The areas that have less access are probably also areas that have higher problems with heart disease or diabetes. But now we just decide that we're going to leave pharmacies and convenience stores off of here. We can check them. They're not going to make a ring around them. And we just want to look at the actual access. You'll see these numbers. It just shows that there's that many stores in that area, right? We want to look at what we were just looking at in the GroundTruth app over here. We assessed Vienna. Now we want to look at the map. And you can see there's no rings covering it. Well, let's scroll in a little bit more. There's this dot over here, and that would be AC's, which is a gas station. There's two stores here. Let's look at them. Casey's General Store, a gas station. Dollar General, which is most likely the one that is being viewed as not a store over here. And again, it's markets, stores, so that might be a little ambiguous whether or not we include it, but for the purpose of this, we're not including Dollar General, market stores, adequate access. We went an actual grocery store. And we can see, because of that, this whole region right here has no food access. We're not talking just no WIC access. We're not talking just no SNAP access. There's just no real food access here. Things become real grim, to me at least, when we try to look at just SNAP and WIC access. If we are dedicated to making sure that we have healthy children in this country, WIC, women, infant, and children, is one of the most important tools that we could imagine. The federal government provides formula, provides fresh fruits and vegetables, and just overall healthy foods to make sure that mothers that are pregnant get adequate nutrition, and that young children in those early developmental stages are most important to get adequate nutrition. But providing that is only half the battle. We need to have more than just the money access where they get the nutrition for free. We need to make sure they have the ability to actually get that access. And see that there are areas where that access is genuinely difficult. Vienna is one of them. If you lived here in Vienna, there is no store that's going to provide you that access unless you drive all the way over here to Anna, which is, I can't tell you the exact distance, but I know it's more than 10 miles away because this train goes out 10 miles. It's a pretty good drive. Or you can come down here to Metropolis, which again is more than 10 miles away at least. And that is part of the problem. That is part of why this is so important. But the new map, the version 2 of this map, V2, it does things a little different. Just notice I tried to make it look prettier. This does the census tracts, just like the other map. Instead of doing the rings, it uses the same data, and you can still see the stores on here. Scrolling far enough, they are still visible, as you can see here. Here's your Stop and Shop. These stores still have their visibility, but they're not as important to this. What we're looking at here is census tracts, and using that information the same way that we would use GroundTruth to determine how safe is food access in that area. And so now we can look at this. We're just look down here at Carroll. Now, as you'll see, Carroll's split in two different census tracts. So this one down here We can look at it, we can see the details. The census tract says we're scoring it as a 29 with scarce access. It's considered rural. So stores within 10 miles is what would qualify it here. Now, nearest store is going to be this Dollar General right here. And again, same issue here, in that we've got to be careful in what we use for API calls, calling out for data from other institutions and all. But we're able to better look at the stores on this map like this one or another one. So right now, we can see that this area is considered a food desert. Even though Rice Community Market still shows up on here, our math is able to take that out of there now, showing it as closed. And so now the closest store is Stop and Shop right here. Maybe if I get the right spot. That's the Dollar General's closest Stop and Shop's up here, Max. And this is the store that's providing access to this area. This whole region right here. If we look at the Stop and Shop, other stores nearby are Dollar General store, convenience store, Cedar Creek Convenience over here. So now what we do is we look at the access and tracks. And the math on this gets a little bit more difficult. We're trying to figure out how to do the overlays right with this to really look at a census tract and determine. But we can look at this census tract and see, it borders up to this one, and it's got a store here. So that helps ease it up. But the rest of these stores, possibly they have one across border. This doesn't count data from out of state. So if there's a access across the river, again, that wouldn't show here. So I imagine this area over here near Cape Girardeau, where there's all these stores over here, actually probably has better access than it looks like they're in East Cape. But from the standpoint of the state of Illinois, access is still weak through here. And that would be all of these counties surrounding it. They don't really have stores that work as access. Now, this one does. It has Hometown Grocery. We look at Vienna, and we can see there's just the dollar store. We look at the communities around it. We can see, down here, Metropolis. Essentially what this is doing is it's looking at the same grocery stores that we looked at in this map over here. We're looking, instead of a ring around it, we're looking at the census tracts around it. How good is access? And if that census tract has a good grocery store, it's almost surely going to have strong to moderate access. If it's touching one that has a good enough grocery access, and it's mostly covered, it's going to have strong to moderate access. And those areas, strong to moderate access, probably have pretty good access to food. But then there's these limited areas and these scarce areas. When you get to looking at those, it becomes a little bit more difficult. Now, if we search an area like Vienna, again, this is an area that the USDA says has adequate food access. When we actually look at it a little bit closer, we can see that there's just not. This is where GroundTruth is telling us, right here. The truth on the ground isn't what the USDA says it is. Not because the USDA doesn't care, but because the USDA lags behind on data. We're taking publicly available data, combining it with some other data that's out there that we have access to, and running it through different methods of scoring that data so that we can come up with a solution that shows us where the need actually is. And this is great when we have limited funds to put out there. I wish resources weren't limited, but they are. And we have to try to do the best that we can with limited resources. Then we have to look at what areas can we make the biggest impacts in with those resources. What areas need those resources the most? And that is what we're trying to do here. We're trying to find those areas that we can have the biggest impact. And at the same time, we're not just trying to find the areas where the biggest impact is, how do we solve a food desert? Vienna, Illinois may be a very difficult area to solve this in. If we look at the first map, there's a wide spread here that just doesn't have any access to WIC, period. And, that may be difficult to solve for some time. It's not cheap to open up a grocery store. One of the things that we can also see is we already know that Rise Community Market down here is closed. So if Rise Community Market doesn't exist here, this is the only store causing this entire region to have any coverage at all. If we look at this map down here, this whole county is in blue. It has moderate access. That is a good thing. Moderate access is good. We're good there. We're talking an area that has over 25% poverty, 8.6% don't have a vehicle, and I already see some health issues here, right? But it does have one operational full grocery store, 3 convenience and dollar stores, and 1 WIC vendor discount in this little census tract. It's almost not a county, it's not a county, it's a census tract. Look at these right here. 0 grocery stores. 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 And we can see it here too. Here is nothing. All the way over here to Metropolis. All the way up here to Anna. And what's that tell us? This store right here, this Mound Stop and Shop, is massively important. If it closes, it creates an entire new food desert here. And a region where we can see the poverty levels and access to vehicles is already a challenge. This region has a 31% poverty rate. So what do we want to do? We want to make sure that Stop and Shop stays open, don't we? If that Stop and Shop closes, to open a store is wildly expensive. But if we can put resources in that Stop and Shop to make sure it stays open, make sure it stays viable, if we can make sure the Stop and Shop here has the help it needs, training, help getting employees, help training new employees, or maybe they lose a manager and they need help with a manager. Whatever resources they might need. Maybe they need an updated POS system. Whatever we provide in assistance to this store helps prevent an entire region from becoming a massive food desert. This whole southern tip of Illinois. That is what GroundTruth is. GroundTruth is about identifying areas that the USDA says isn't a food desert, and identifying areas that maybe aren't a food desert right now. I mean, with that Stop and Shop right there, you can see that Mounds is not a food desert. They've got a grocery store. That's wonderful. That's great. The small town of Mounds, it's not a food desert. But how many communities rely on one store like the Stop and Shop? And I don't know the Stop and Shop. I don't know the owners of it. But demographic-wise, the reality is that a lot of the owners of these stores like this are stressed out. want to get out of business. It's not a business to make a lot of money in. Many of them are approaching retirement age, and many of those have no succession plan in place. So what happens if this owner of this Mountain Stop and Shop is an older person who's thinking about retiring in 2 years, and they don't have anyone that wants to take it over? Maybe they can sell it, maybe. But do you think the community of Mounds and the people in the Mounds area want to survive on a maybe? If this closes, there's no WIC access for a wide range. There's no food access to fresh food for a wide range. Is that worth something on a maybe? When we recognize an area like this, when we see the importance of that store, we can take it from a maybe to what can we do? And we can go down there and we can talk to the owner and the management. We can talk to the community. We can make sure we have plans in place. We can make sure the community knows just how important that store is. And we can make sure that we give them the right support they need to survive and the right support that is necessary to keep the entire region from losing the one thing that's still providing it some access.